Hello, music fans. Welcome to Death by Unicorn, where I talk about metal, rock, and prog music. This is my show called What's New 2024, where I talk about new albums that came out recently. Today I'm going to talk about 9 new albums that came out over the past week and give my quick first impressions of them, starting with, I'll go in my order of preference. So I'll start with my favorite. This is a bit of a weird one to talk about because it's not really a brand new album, it's a deluxe version, but I'll start with this one. It's Enslaved with Heimdal, the deluxe version. The original version came out in 2023. This is a great Norwegian progressive black metal band, and this is an excellent album. This probably shouldn't count, but I figured I'd mention it in case others might enjoy it like I did. I heard the original album. I think it's excellent, so I was definitely interested to hear the deluxe version. It's really the same album, but there are a couple of alternate versions of tracks, and then there's some live tracks. It's an excellent listen, but I'm not going to count this as a 2024 album when it comes to making my year-end list, since this is a deluxe version of a 2023 album that just happened to come out in 2024. It doesn't add too much to the original though, so I'd say if you're a fan of the original album Heimdal, and you want to dive deep into Enslaved, then definitely check this out to hear the alternate versions and the live stuff. If you heard Heimdal and didn't like it, definitely skip this. It's not going to change your mind. If you've never heard Heimdal and you are intrigued about Enslaved's newest album, honestly, just start with streaming the original version rather than this deluxe version. Then decide whether you like that and want to dive deeper based on how much you like the original. If you want to dive deeper, then try this deluxe version. The music is for fans of progressive and cinematic black metal bands like Isan and Xanthocroid. Next up, I'm going to talk about a brand new album. All the rest of the albums on the list are brand new rather than just deluxe versions or reworkings. This is Big Big Train with The Likes of Us. This is a progressive rock album, the 15th album by this band from the UK. They have a new vocalist on this one after the passing of their previous vocalist, David Longdon. The new vocalist, Alberto Bravin, does a great job. Beneath the Mass is an awesome prog epic. Love is the Light is a beautiful track with beautiful lead and harmony vocals. My main complaint with this album by Big Big Train and this band in general is that it all kind of starts to sound a little safe and samey. Pretty much every song is an emotional but uplifting ballad. It's kind of got the singer-songwriter style to the songs, where it feels like the song has essentially then been put through like a progifier. So it sounds like a basic singer-songwriter song that they progify by often just adding an instrumental proggy interlude somewhere in the middle of the song where they can let their amazing instrumental chops loose and play intensely and then try some odd time signatures only just to get back to a typical singer-songwriter verse or chorus after that. Now, this kind of formulaic approach could lead to criticisms of them being formulaic and not pushing any musical boundaries or doing any innovation. But I can't deny the songs are just excellent. The musicians in the band are truly amazing. So I'm not bothered by the lack of innovation too much. This is still likely going to be in my year-end top 50 albums. I just really wanted to be blown away a little more by this album by Big Big Train, and I hope that in the future they take some more risks, do some more experiments, bring in some different sounds, go in some different directions. I don't want them to completely abandon their sound, but maybe like have half the tracks in this kind of style that they do, and then have the other half of the tracks try and explore new areas. I would love to hear what they can do if they really push themselves. Next up, I want to talk about Dirt Poor Robins and their album Firebird. This is kind of like a progressive rock opera sound with a lot of this musical theater cinematic vibes to it. But it's also very pop, very catchy, got a little bit of that indie alternative rock as well as some post-rock influences as well. This is another excellent album. It's the 8th album by this American band, and I heard their last album, Queen of the Night. I thought it was excellent, so I was looking forward to hearing more from Dirt Poor Robins. Their last album was very prog rock, but it had that show tunes and musical theater vibe to it as well. I think people who like The Deer Hunter will like Dirt Poor Robins. This album is very similar to the last one, but it has more 80s pop influences thrown in, and it has some intense guitar solos thrown in as well to their recognizable prog rock and musical theater rock opera vibes. There's amazing vocals on here, especially the female vocals I think are a real standout. The male vocals are good as well. The opening track, Political, is amazing. Fever Dream and Beauty Will Save the World are amazing as well. To the Heights might be my favorite song on the album after a couple listens because it's just so catchy and undeniable. It reminds me of the Muse song Exopolitics from their album Black Holes and Revelations. The only complaint I can think of about the album is I think the first half was stronger than the second half of the album. But the 3-song run of Fever Dream, Beauty Will Save the World, and To the Heights is a truly amazing 3-song run on the first half of the album. So even though the second half is a little bit weaker after the amazing first half, I'm calling this an excellent album overall. Next up is Magoria with Hollingsworth Mansion. This is the second album by this band from the Netherlands. It's another kind of progressive rock opera, but this one's got a bit more metal than Dirt Poor Robins. It's like a prog metal rock opera. If you're a fan of Arion, I think you'll like this. It's got a bunch of different singers, both male and female. And of course, the rock opera sound mixed with progressive metal immediately makes me think of Arion. So check out Magoria Hollingsworth Mansion if that sounds appealing to you. And we've moved into kind of the very good tier now rather than the excellent tier. Next up, I'm going to talk about Everything with Mountainhead. This is the 7th album by this band from the UK. Kind of like an art rock with pop, electronica, indie, and progressive rock all thrown in there. And all the tracks on here are just really catchy, really poppy, and a really good time. It's interesting, kind of intricate, catchy pop stuff. Not the kind of pop you'll hear on the radio or top 40, but just the kind of pop where if this is what pop sounds like, I would be happy to turn on top 40 radio. Next, I want to talk about Another Sky and their album Beach Day. This is the second album by this indie rock band from the UK. It's kind of indie rock. It's got a little bit of prog rock, post rock, and pop influences as well. I heard the single The Pain ahead of time, and that's a great song. It got me interested in checking out the album. Probably my favorite track on the album on first listen, but I also enjoyed the track Psychopath, which is a great heavy rocker. There's great female vocals on this album from Katrin Vincent. She can hit some high notes. Just every song on here is very catchy and accessible, but still interesting and somewhat intricate with that progressive and artistic spirit. Next, I want to talk about Daniel Romano's Outfit and their album Too Hot to Sleep. This is a Canadian indie rock band. They've got some country and folk influences in there, but they really have a lot of different styles blended together. I'm not sure how many albums this Canadian musician has released. I think he dropped about 7 in 2020 that I listened to, including one where he featured Danny Carey of Tool on drums that I thought was really cool. So since I really enjoyed Daniel Romano's output in 2020, and I really enjoy the band he used to be in called Attack in Black, I decided to check this one out. I'm not as big on his newer indie rock mixed with folk and country style that he's been doing on this album, but it is still very well done. I can hear that he's a big music fan with influences from a lot of different genres. I can hear hints of hardcore punk and prog rock all blended in skillfully into this alternative indie folk country rock sound. But my favorite track on first listens was Field of Ruins, which I think had the most prog influence in it. So for people like me who are big fans of prog rock, I think Field of Ruins would be the best track from this Daniel Romano's outfit, Too Hot to Sleep, to check out. Next, I'll talk about Bruce Dickinson and his album, The Mandrake Project. This is heavy metal, of course, the 7th album by this legendary singer from the UK, from Iron Maiden, of course. This is heavy metal. It's got some hard rock and progressive metal influences as well. It sounds like Bruce Dickinson singing over a more modern sounding backing metal and rock band than Iron Maiden. Some songs use lower tuned guitars than Iron Maiden would use, and they feature some more guitar chugging that you'd hear in like groove metal, metalcore, and djent. There's even a couple of moments with some brief screams on this album, and I'm not sure if they're done by Bruce, but they might be. Other songs on the album sound quite different with a more old school traditional heavy metal style, and some sound like doom metal. Resurrection Men has a riff that sounds like it would be a Black Sabbath riff. There's also some progressive influences on here and some experimentation with different instruments you wouldn't typically hear in Iron Maiden and heavy metal music. Like on the track Eternity Has Failed, there's some flute. All in all, I think this is a very good album, but it's nothing mind-blowing, so won't end up on my end of year top 50 or anything like that. Personally, I found this slightly more interesting to listen to than the latest Iron Maiden album, Senjutsu, because I find there's more variety here from this Bruce Dickinson album. It's probably better than most of what Iron Maiden has been putting out lately, but not as good as my favorite stuff from Maiden, which is their classic 80s material, plus my favorite album from Maiden, which I'm a weird one, but I picked my favorite Maiden. It's from 2000 called Brave New World. So not as good as Brave New World, not as good as their classic 80s material, but more interesting for me to listen to than the newest Iron Maiden stuff. And last, I want to talk about Jacob Collier and his album DJESSE Volume 4. This is the 4th album by this artist from the UK. It's kind of a pop rock album, but it's got a lot of genres mixed in. Again, there's soul, funk, electronic, jazz fusion, classical, and progressive rock all thrown in there. Maybe little bits of other things like world music and the odd even like sprinkle of like metal and harsher music like hardcore or whatever, but not much of that. I heard the single Little Blue ahead of time, and that got me interested in checking out this full album because Little Blue is such a beautiful song. I got goosebumps from it. The opening track on here is called 100,000 Voices, and that was pretty damn cool too. There was even an unexpected moment with a scream in that song, even though it sounded like it was more of a pop song initially. The first half of this entire album had me really engaged, and I thought it was really cool and just excellent. But unfortunately, a weird thing happened, and it just like took a left turn for me at about the halfway point. The second half started to get really corny, cheesy. I found it getting pretentious and annoying. I really started to notice it with the song Witness, with the rap and the choir, and it just sounded like overblown and unnecessary. And then I didn't like the cover of Bridge Over Troubled Water. Even though the performances and the production on all of this are great, including on Bridge Over Troubled Water, it just feels corny and try hard. It's like that feeling I get when I watch American Idol or America's Got Talent or shows like that, where I just kind of like cringe at the way people sing and perform on those types of shows. Over You with Chris Martin was also corny and cheesy, and it just sounds like those songs where Coldplay collaborates with pop artists like BTS and Rihanna. That's what it reminds me of, and those are usually my least favorite Coldplay songs and the songs by Coldplay that I dislike the most. Box of Stars Part 1 and 2 are also corny tracks. They have lyrics in all sorts of different languages, which, I don't know, it sounds like it's trying to have some kind of message, or sounds like it's trying to be smart, and it just is annoying. On the bright side, there's a lot of production candy in the album that still makes it interesting to listen to. I'm really torn about what to think about this album as a whole. The first half I thought was excellent, and then the second half I thought was pretentious. It made me cringe. So I'd call the second half like a below average listening experience in terms of enjoyment, if I just consider that half. I wish the whole album was like the first half. And even thinking back to myself, like, I wonder how much of it was, if there really was a change, or if I just started getting tired of the sound. And maybe it was a pretty consistent sound throughout, and maybe the second half, if I heard that first and then I heard the first half second, I would like the second half and not the first half. I'm not sure. But overall, I think I'll rate it kind of in the middle of, I thought the first half was excellent and the second half was below average, so I'll rate it in the middle and call this album just good, but not very good. And that's it for my first impressions of these 9 albums that came out recently. What do you think of these albums? And let me know if there's some other great stuff that came out recently that you've been listening to and enjoying. And stay tuned for the next one. Peace out.